Test, test, test. Test, test, test. All right, bees, you ready to get unbothered? All right, then. Take your alligator.
Everything bothers him.
He's unbothered.
He calls it unbothered, but that's what's cute. Because everything bothers him. He's bothered. I'm a botherina.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Unbothered by Thai Rivera. That's right, it's Unbothered by Thai Rivera. I'm your host, Thai Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. Currently, my co-host Snoopy Bijou is enjoying a Whimzees Alligator. And when I say enjoying, I do mean enjoying. She is once again going to town on the Whimzees Alligator. Hobbies. Love me? She don't have time for love right now. No time for love, Dr. Jones. She has been going to town on her alligators again lately. That's the thing. I told you guys, she went through a phase where she didn't want them, and then now she wants them again. So here we are, Whimzees Alligators, the never-to-be sponsor of Unbothered by Thai Rivera, but we still give them a shout-out, and we still put our Amazon affiliates link for Whimzees Alligators down below in the description box. If you guys need to do any shopping on Amazon, go ahead and click one of the links down below. Maybe I'll end up with a little cheat day candy money. Who knows? Who knows where the world will take us? Who knows where this episode will take us, really? Because I got to tell you guys, I'm not bothered by much right now. You know, last episode was the one where I talked about, my birthday, and that was actually recorded like a week before, and it came out a week late or whatever. To the people that are listening only on audio, I do apologize to you. I will put out the most recent episode, and then I'll put this one out shortly after. But, it's just me running this operation, really. I don't think people understand the amount of work I do. Right now, it's about 3 a.m. and I'm really just starting my work day for today when it comes to this, just because I have to feel inspired to do Unbothered. And then yesterday, I put out 3 pieces of content. I put out Comedy Tip Tuesday, I put out a YouTube short, and then I also put out a short video that was actually longer, and I edited down just as a experiment for YouTube, and that was the one that was on the transgender swimmer and boozy badass coming for her and saying that she was cheating. And I do agree with that. I don't like a lot of what's happening in the LGBT community right now, but that's just going to be what it is. The LGBT community is so hard-headed, and I really don't think it's about the LGBT individuals, which is the biggest shame of it all, is that it really is activists that just want to continue to get paid off of fear. And I plan to do an entire video about that. I know I said I was going to do it a couple weeks back, but I feel like it's really going to take a lot of attention, and I really feel like I have to be factually correct in that one. And not that I'm not factually correct in the things I'm saying when I'm on Unbothered, but just if you're going to make a case, you have to make a case. You can't just throw out charges and say, like, this is what I feel about it, and not actually back that up with anything. And I just know that, a lot of people are making a lot of money right now off of LGBT activism, and those people don't always look to solve problems. They look to perpetuate problems and perpetuate fear so that people continue to feel like they need to rely on them. And that's really the way I feel about the LGBT community right now. When it comes to LGBT in general, I'm not on board with a lot of stuff that they try to make a big deal of. I feel like they really do hurt a lot of us with a lot of the things that they do and say, and I feel like they speak for a lot of us in cases where we didn't need anybody to speak for us. I know that me personally, a lot of times I'll hear like the LGBT community is so upset about blah, blah, blah. And I'll just be like, no, that's not a concern for me at all. I was not worried about that story. I didn't care about that story. I didn't know about that story until LGBT decided to blow it up. And now, you have people voting against LGBT rights left and right. No pun intended. But it's just gotten so ridiculous that it really has had the opposite effect of the effect that it was supposed to originally have, or they claim that it was supposed to have. But I personally think the powers that be within the LGBT community are actually happy about the way things are going right now, because the more that legislation gets passed that's anti-LGBT, the more they have job security. And so with me, I really do get tired of what it is LGBT is claiming to protect us on, or what it is they're claiming that they're doing. When, if you see behind the scenes, like me, when I first started doing stand-up, I really wanted to be a voice from at least within the community, not for the community, because I don't ever want to speak for a lot of people. But I did want to be a voice from within the community and be able to help out as much as I could. And I got shut down at every pass just because I didn't say things exactly the way that they wanted me to. And it was just very frustrating because I couldn't understand how it was. Supposedly, we're all on each other's side and we're all looking out for each other and we are family. Because if you guys didn't know, back in the day, Sister Sledge, We Are Family was a gay anthem because that was the code for gay or LGBT back then. Because LGBT is relatively new. I would say within the last 20 years, 20 years that, well, not even that, probably closer to 15 that they were really pushing LGBT, because before that we were just called the gay community, and then it became the gay and lesbian community, and then that morphed into gay, lesbian, transgender, well, first gay, LGBT, which was lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. And then now we've morphed into so many letters that it really has become ridiculous, which I've done jokes about it and I will continue to do jokes about it because to me, the entire movement is a joke at this point. And I don't care if people get upset with me. I don't care if people don't agree with me. It's fine. Don't agree with me. Get upset with me if you want to. But I will tell you as a gay man that a lot of other LGBT people are starting to come around to my way of thinking. I can tell you that for a fact because of the way people react on social media when you say things that aren't necessarily just holding up your pom-poms and being like, yes, LGBT activists, this is exactly what we need. A lot of us are like, no. When it comes to the Dave Chappelle situation, a lot of us are like, no, that wasn't a cause that we wanted to take up. That wasn't a fight we wanted to have, especially indefinitely and just to keep going at Dave Chappelle. Maybe I agree with certain things Dave Chappelle said. Maybe even if I don't agree with certain things Dave Chappelle says, I don't think that they're necessarily hateful. Sometimes it's just a different point of view. And that's a lot of times what I run up against, not only in LGBT, but just life in general. People want you to just completely adopt their way of thinking and think no other way about it and not question what it is they're telling you you're supposed to think. But with me, a lot of times I just get like, well, who the hell are you? Like, why am I supposed to just take up your style of thinking or your school of thought when I don't necessarily know who you are? I don't know that I like the way you live your life. And if you're always complaining and whining about everything, then I don't necessarily know that I'm on board. Because if you don't know the point of this podcast, I start off bothered and then by the end of it, I'm unbothered. And I guess I lied when I said I wasn't bothered about anything because here I am bitching like I'm bothered. Which, I guess I can always find something to be bothered about, but less and less lately because life is going really well. Like I did the Toys and Boys podcast not too long ago. If you guys want, check that out on social media. I'll go ahead and put one of my little, right here. Or maybe I'll put the video at the end. Who knows? Maybe I'll just put it right there and call it a day. But yeah. I did the Toys and Boys podcast. That was super fun. My friend Anthony Victorson, who's actually been a guest on Unbothered by Thai Rivera, and he co-hosts that show with Harrison Dye, who's another one of my friends, local Las Vegas comics, both of them. And they asked me to do their podcast. Well, they said that they were thinking about having guests because I watch their podcast regularly. It's a newer podcast, not a lot of viewers, but I like it a lot. And I know that if they continue to work on it and if they continue to try to grow their audience, that they'll be great. And so when they said that they were thinking about having guests on the show, I was like, well, why don't you guys have me on? I like both of you. I want to chat. And I don't usually like doing other people's projects, but if you're my friend and I really would like to just have a conversation with you, then, I'll actually show up. But that's the other thing people have been getting upset with me about, which I don't know where people get these ideas that they're allowed to be upset with me for putting down boundaries. Because I have been offered, no lie, it has been a weekly thing for a while now. At least once a week, somebody will hit me up and be like, hey, let's shoot a special. And I'm like, let's shoot a special as in you rent some cameras or have some cameras and some equipment and you shoot me and then I have the money with you about my talent, okay, let me hear you out. How much money are you offering? Oh, well, we don't have an actual budget. We're just thinking that we would. Okay, first off, that's a lie. You do have a budget. You're spending your budget on camera people because there have to be people to operate the cameras. You're spending your money on sound people. You're spending your money on renting a venue. You definitely do have a budget. You just don't have talent, which is what you're planning on shooting, figured into the budget, which I get it. I get it when people say, where do you think the money comes from? Well, I know the money comes from revenue that's been created through selling the special and through displaying the special in different places and, plays on Sirius XM. I know where the money comes from. I self-produced an album. My friend Nick was really responsible for a lot of that, but I was involved every step of the way, and I saw the way that all worked out. And you're right, it is a hustle. But I've also been hustling on the open mic scene for 19 years now, and I think that I should be able to say, hey, this is actually worth something if you want me to shoot something. And yeah, I know you're taking a chance, but I'm taking a chance on you. You might not be the best at promoting this. You might not be the best at making sure that it gets distributed the way it needs to. It might be just an exercise in futility for me. So how about you understand that we're both taking a risk on each other, and you kick out a couple dollars if you want me to be the subject of your special. I don't think that's too much to ask, but I posted that on Facebook and some people got a little upset about it, and it's the same people that are offering me these kinds of deals. So for me, it's like, yeah, I get it. And I'm not even hating on their hustle. And I didn't even say nobody should do it. I said, I'm not doing it. So if I were trying to start, rally up some kind of posse and be like, hey, everybody, don't do this. I haven't tried to create a movement. I don't have an interest in creating a movement. If you feel like shooting that kind of special is beneficial to you, there was the first taping I ever did. I got paid $500 for flat rate. No chance of ever getting any kind of residual or any money later on. Just $500 was what it was. And I agreed to do it because I needed the exposure at the time. And at that time, I really did need the exposure. It was for the Logo Network. Some of you saw it. It was called One Night Stand Up. I did that. After I did that, I used that to springboard myself onto Live at Gotham, which is a Comedy Central show. I did Live at Gotham. I used my footage from my Logo Network to sell myself for Live at Gotham. And I was the one that did all of that. I did all the legwork on that. Thank you to Comedy Central. They did have me on. I had to do a showcase for it. Then I got paid better to do Comedy Central. Then I got paid better for the next thing I did, better for the next thing I did. So I don't want to work backwards. And it's not fair for people to ask me to work backwards. And it's not fair for people to get mad just because I'm public about the fact that I'm tired of being offered stuff that doesn't pay money. Like, that's what people don't get, is I was posting that on my Facebook because a lot of the offers do come in through Facebook Messenger. That's where they'll initially contact me. And that, for me, is a great first step, because you hit me up on Facebook, then I can let you know whether or not you need my actual email address by what you say. Oh, cheers to me. By what you say once we figure out what the details are. Just, the general. It's like, if you hit me up on Facebook and you're like, hey, would you have an interest in shooting a special? Then my first question will be, how much does it pay? And then you'll hit me with, well, actually, we don't have a budget. And I'm like, okay, well, then let me just turn this down right here. There's no reason for you to even send me an official email because I know that I'm not going to do it. So I'm not going to waste your time. I'm not going to waste my time. There's nothing for you to email me about. Don't even hit compose. Just let it be what it is. Let it die. I'm not interested in not making money. I have enough ways to not make money, and I'm not employing any of those right now either. Like right now, I work on my YouTube regularly. My YouTube is fully monetized, and so I'm not going to lie to you guys and act like YouTube is just bringing in all the money right now. That's not what it is, but YouTube is building, and it's getting me more and more money all the time. So why would I not just continue to work on my own stuff and self-produce and own all of me? I mean, like, obviously YouTube takes a percentage out of the advertising, but YouTube also doesn't have me involved in that part of the situation, and I understand the way YouTube works, and I'm fine with the way YouTube works, and so that's what I do. I'm just continuing to build my own social media so that I can have more control over my career in the long run. And so for me, this is the best avenue. I'm not worried about shooting a special with some company I've never heard of that, like I said, might not be the best at advertising. So why do I want to sign away rights? Because that's the other thing. You sign away a lot of rights when you do that. You know, you no longer own that particular performance. You still own your material in most contracts, but some contracts also say that you can't record the same material for a certain number of years. And maybe I don't want to give up that much control. And why should anybody be mad at me about that? Why should that be a real thing for anybody is what I really don't understand. You know, I just had a birthday. I'm not getting any younger. Is it not okay for me to just at some point say, okay, let me try to make sure that I'm going to take care of myself in old age? Maybe I want, like I told you guys, to eventually have a family, to eventually at least have a baby, if not be fully married. I don't know what's going to happen as far as relationships go. I don't pretend to know. And I'm fine with being single. I've really started to enjoy just being by myself, because sometimes I think about relationships, and what it would take for me to be in a relationship is somebody that just gives me a lot of freedom. And I'm not worried at all about having sex with strangers. I've calmed down a lot on Grindr and all that stuff, which I've been telling you guys I've been doing, you know, here and there, where I just like completely don't have an interest in being on Grindr. And that's what it is. Like right now, I would rather work on the things that I need to work on than hook up with strangers. I've hooked up with enough strangers in my life. And yeah, maybe the number has been kind of high, and some people would kind of judge that too. But at what point in my life do I just get to say, I don't care what anybody thinks of anything I do? If you don't like what I do, don't look at it. Nobody's forcing you to look at me or my lifestyle or judge what it is I'm doing. I just put it out there because I feel like what I say is helpful to a certain segment of the population. There are other people like me that have taken time out of their lives to be sexually free, to have a good time, to enjoy that part of themselves, and then one day be able to honestly say, okay, I'm done with that part of it. I'm done with the anonymous sex. I'm done with the random sex. I'm done with the casual sex. Maybe now I want sexual relationships to actually mean something to me. And maybe I'll change my mind in a week, and that's just what I'm feeling right now at this moment. But whatever it is, and it's my life. So I don't owe anybody explanations on that. But at the same time, I will break it down for you guys just so you guys know what's going on, and you don't feel like, okay, well, what is the deal with what he told us on the last episode or the episode before that? But if you've been listening to my episodes, I've been telling you guys throughout that I just have less and less interest in hookups lately, just like I've been sober since December 8th or 9th. I can't remember the exact date. If I look at a calendar, I can remember the date, but you know, I just have slowed down on everything as far as all that stuff goes. And right now I feel like it's best if I'm just 100% clear, 100% sober, and 100% focused. Like that's the way I feel about everything. And so, you know, and we've been over that too. Some people will try to, you know, dissuade me from that and be like, well, you know, you could party. I know I could party if I want to. I know that 100%. I don't have any question in my mind about whether or not I can party. I know I can party, but if that's not what I want to do, then why should I do that? Just because other people consider that to be normal behavior? Well, if that's normal for you, then you do that. I'm not trying to discourage you from that. I don't mind what anybody does. As long as I'm not involved, as long as nobody's putting me under any kind of gun to do anything, I'm not worried about what anybody else does. I just don't think about it like that. You know, a lot of times when I'm done at like Ocha Bar, I'll leave pretty late, you know, because I'll just be hanging out, or they'll be wrapping up for the end of the night, you know, because the way that it works out for us getting paid, we have to wait for the bartender at the end of the night. And I don't mind any of that. Like, it's the way it works. I like hanging out there. I get along with everybody. And so, you know, we'll hang out until it's done, until it's time for me to get paid. And so like last week, it was after 3 a.m. It was probably closer to 3:30 or 4 by the time I got out of there. But I didn't have a problem with that at all. Well, there were still people there that were continuing to party. I don't think anything about that. I'm not like, oh, those losers are still partying. No, have a great time. Party. Like, it's what you're out for, then be out for that. I went through that, in my life where I really did enjoy partying, and I don't regret any of that. But like moving forward, where do I want to be? So that's what I was saying when it comes to my situation right now. At some point, is it not okay for me to just be like, all right, now I want to actually start thinking about what I'm going to do in the future, just as far as having some money put away and not having to just keep gig to gig. And, I've been fortunate in that that's not where I'm at right now. I'm not worried about the gig to gig life. But that has taken some planning, and it has taken some discipline, and it's going to take more planning and more discipline to make sure that that continues on at an even higher level further into the future. But I don't expect anybody to figure that out for me. I'm not asking anybody to make this work for me or help me figure it out. No, all I need you to do is just stay out of my way. That's all I need. It's, I don't need you to do anything for me. Watching my content is great. That's helpful. But as far as, I'm not looking for anybody to make it happen for me. I'm not looking for anybody to strategize it for me. All I need from you is just don't try to hinder what it is I'm doing by being like, well, why don't you try doing it this way? Well, why don't you try doing it that way? Well, if you have constructive criticisms or actual constructive suggestions, then I don't mind listening to that. I really do believe that intelligent people do listen to other people when they're talking sense. But if your solution to what it is I'm doing right now is that I go back to drinking, well, I'm sorry that I'm not going to be your drinking buddy, but I don't really see how that's going to help me. And then some people would say, well, don't you ever like to take a mental break? Well, I take mental breaks. That's what Bijou is about. Me and Bijou go for walks daily. And when I'm out on the road, I'll take time to myself. And that's another thing that I don't think a lot of people understand about the way I live is there is a lot of alone time in it. And I'm fine with that. I'm happy with that because I get to actually think about the things that I want to. My thoughts are my own. Yeah, I might be working a fair amount of that time, but I like what I'm doing. I do sometimes get exhausted with the process of editing. Like I said, I did 3 videos yesterday. So that means like 3 editing jobs. One of the videos was a performance video. That was the short that I did, but I have to make the thumbnail for that. And I also have to edit that and make sure that the sound's all right on it, which the sound's only going to be so great because we are actually live performance, and I guess I should have a Zoom or something like that on stage, but I haven't had the most success with that yet. But that's something that I'll continue to work on and tweak. Like, you guys see how much better the sound got on this from like my first videos. My first videos were shot just with the phone, using the phone audio. So now I've got this set up, and I gotta say it sounds pretty good. So I figured a lot of things out just as far as this goes, and I'll figure that out too. It's just until recently, I hadn't really been concentrating on that very much. And like I said, I don't feel any kind of regret about any of the things that I haven't done to this point. I'm not feeling like, oh, I really wish I had done it this way, or I wish I had done it that way. No, I don't. But like now, the way that I'm concentrating, or I'm lying. When, like I discussed before, when I was with my ex, there was a point where he was getting so upset with the way that I was shooting my videos, or the content of some of my videos, that I really did get to a point where I was like, well, I'd just rather not argue, so I just won't record videos. And that is the one thing I do, and I wouldn't even say I regret it, because I felt like it was important at that time. But if I had a time machine and I could do it all over again, I would go back and just record my content and be like, there's different strategies that I would have employed. But hindsight's always going to be 20/20 when it comes to those kinds of things. But I don't fully regret it. It's just like, yeah, if I had a time machine, I could do that part over. I would definitely just continue making content. And not only because of where my channel might be numbers wise if I had done that, but also because I enjoy the creative aspect of this. And that's part of the reason that I still continue to do Unbothered, because tonight I didn't necessarily feel like I had anything that I was bothered about. So I was thinking, what am I going to talk about? And there was a part of me that felt like maybe I shouldn't even do one tonight, but I have a commitment with you guys. And I do actually like talking to you guys. I do actually like that this is my version of therapy, that I can talk to you guys and just be like, okay, this is what's going on. And then I'll feel better a lot of the time. You know, I do go from bothered to unbothered. But I just want to work on me and the things that I want to work on rather than get sidetracked. Because if I do another taping, then I actually have to think about what material I want to do and what material I actually want to give them. And depending on the contract, if whether or not I want to give up that material for however many years they're talking about. And the answer to all of that right now is just no. I don't want to give anything up. I'd rather just continue to do what I'm doing. You know, the other night I did my friend Dee's show, Campfire Comedy, which was out in Hellendale, California, which Hellendale is probably about 2.5 hours away from Las Vegas. I think it's 2.5 hours. Yeah, it's 2.5 hours west. So it's past, well, I guess that is what? Southwest. Yeah. Because it's past Barstow, and then you take a particular freeway or highway, and it's kind of close to Hesperia, and it's the desert, and it was in a revival tent, and I was joking calling it a revival tent. It's actually a professional event tent. But like the theme of the show is it's campfire comedy. So that's the feel of it. It's out in the middle of the desert. People come out. We had an audience of probably, I would say, at the peak of the number of audience we had, or the peak number of audience we had, was probably like 14 or 15. But some of them were the staff from the restaurant that was next door. So they came in, blew some steam off, hung out for a little bit, and then they had to go. And it was really a fun situation. But like, that's where I'll go, and like, people wonder, like, where do you give back, or where do you, and I got paid for it, so it's not like completely just giving back. But when it comes to my level of, I don't want to do this and I don't want to do that, I know sometimes that'll make it sound like I'm a difficult person or I'm not willing to give it all. But like, that situation was me having to give a bit, because the way that it worked out was I go and do it, but I have to help them work out the kinks because it was the first one. It's an outdoor show. So the spotlight didn't work the way that it was supposed to work. So we ended up just having to use the backlighting that we had, which was a purple light. And then the sound was great. The audience, like I said, since it was the first time doing the show and they're figuring out the advertising and marketing, because figuring out advertising and marketing for a small town like that can be tricky. And so Dee knows, because I've known her forever, that I'll work through anything. I don't care about the size of the audience. I don't care about the audio when it comes down to it. I don't care about anything. I'm there to give those people a good time, and that's what I was going to do. And no matter what, I will end up doing that. So Dee knows that I'll do that, and she knows that I'll work through any kind of kinks that we have, and then she can make tweaks and figure it out for the next person she has out, which the next person she has out is going to be Kate Quigley. And then she's going to have Jessica Michelle Singleton after that. Then Joe Bartnick after that. All of those comics I like, all of them I actually love. I know all of them, and they're all good people. So for me, it's just like, that's where I'll be a little more relaxed. And we recorded an episode of Unbothered out there. I still got to wait to get the footage from that. I interviewed my friend Ryan Barrasso, who I took with me to be my originally MC/host. And then it turned out that he ended up being the feature because they had a local guy do the hosting, which the local guy was cool. I didn't talk to him very much, but he was cool enough, pleasant enough guy. And so he was the host after all. And then Ryan Barrasso went up right before me. Did 20 minutes, I think, was what Ryan had to do. And then I had to take him home. Ryan was great. Ryan was fun. I had to take them home, as in the expression, like close out the show. Not as in, because I did have to take Ryan home too, but that wasn't until the next day. So then we recorded the podcast, and Dee wanted to check out her podcast equipment and have me actually test that too, like us shoot one and see how it comes out. And so we did that. And so we'll see, if there's a problem with the uploading or something went wrong with the recording or something went wrong with the audio, then that's something that I'll just have to accept. But I'm not really worried about that, because while I liked what me and Ryan talked about, there were different points where I felt like the conversation didn't necessarily flow. And it was just because I feel like Ryan thought that I was attacking him at different points, which if you guys end up seeing it, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. It's very obvious. Like, we address it during the episode. So that's one of the reasons that I really hope it does come through, is so that you guys get to see the way that played out. But with Ryan, it was like he didn't understand that and I explained this on the episode too, I was just trying to get a true feel and a true understanding for what it was he was saying that he was into, or the way that he likes to live his life, because certain things he had said and done over the weekend had made me feel like they were contradictory to the behavior that somebody would express if they actually liked what they were doing. It seemed like there was a little bit of resentment, and that's something we addressed and something we talked about. And I just sometimes wonder about that with people, when it comes to that kind of situation, when people get defensive when you question what it is they're doing. Like with me, if you try to convince me to do anything other than what I'm doing, or try to tell me that I'm not living my life right or anything like that, then I'll get annoyed with you. But if you're just asking me why it is I do certain things the way that I do them, I'll very quickly answer you, and I don't at all feel like you're judging me. I just feel like, oh, you just must want to know why it is I'm doing this particular way. Like if you were to ask me, say for example, why are you concentrating so much on the social media right now rather than continuing to stay on the road? And it's like, because I don't necessarily want to continue to work the road the way I've been working it for the last, with me, the road has probably been a good 10 years now where I've been working it this particular way. Before that, I was with Joe Coy, and that was for a year and a half. So that would have been put me at what? 8.5 years or 7.5 years. No, yeah, 8.5 years. Because before that, then it was doing the road, but it was doing the opening, featuring guest sets even, and then just being in LA doing the local stuff. And that's when I worked for the Scented Oils and Perfuming Company and worked telecommute, and all of that was happening during those early years, because with, certain regions, because this isn't across the board, certain regions get to work a lot faster. I noticed a lot of my friends in the Midwest get to start working the road a lot faster than LA comedians. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, it's really expensive to live in LA. And so when you have to go do shows that are paying you $50 a show, if you're lucky, because that's a lot of times what you're going to get when you're hosting one of the, middle of nowhere, off the beaten path type shows, you'll make $50 a show. So with what you pay for rent in LA and just overall the cost of living, for you to leave whatever your regular job is or regular jobs are and instead go on the road for, say, a week, and you're getting paid $50 a night, and out of that $50, in a lot of cases, if you're hosting, the headliner and the feature will end up splitting the gas money, and so you won't have to pay that if they're generous. If they're not, they'll want you to pay for some of the gas too, so that comes out of your $50 a night. Then when it comes to for your food, most people aren't going to take care of your food. A lot of the venues that you perform at don't necessarily take care of your food, and if they do, That's one meal. If you're a grown man, grown person, you're probably going to eat more than once a day. So factor that in, at least even if you're being cheap and do like a lot of dollar menu stuff, you're still going to spend probably at least $10 a day. So then that's coming out of your $50 a night, $10. So now you're making 40, take away gas. Like do the math on it. You come home with very little money. Sometimes you come home owing money, or not owing money, but in the hole, So it just, it takes longer to get on the road sometimes in LA. Also, there seem to be less opportunities because there's less around you. Maybe there's Bakersfield, Fresno. Some of the Inland Empire will pay very little, but then you have to go to like Oregon and Washington, which again, you start running into that same problem. Like that's a lot of where those gigs are that I first started doing when I first started doing the road. It would be like Pasco, Washington, Roseburg. Yeah, I think it's Roseburg, Oregon, Medford, Oregon, Salem, Oregon, Beaverton. Which Beaverton is basically a suburb, a very close suburb of Portland. But you'd be surprised what a world of difference it is between Portland proper and Beaverton. Like, it's not the same. And so, these are the kinds of things you would have to do to go on the road. And so, there was that part of my career, which was the early part of my career, and probably where I spent my the first 3 or 4 years was no road at all. It was just being in LA, working all the open mics in LA, local shows, sometimes get paid for some of the local shows, but shows in LA don't usually pay that much. In LA, a lot of things pay $25 or $30, and it doesn't really matter if it's even Laugh Factory or, Comedy Store that paid regulars for the original room shows. Main room pays more, but for the original room shows, it's $15 a set. And so that gives you an idea, and that's the world famous Comedy Store. So that gives you an idea of what you're making when you're in LA. And so, I did that for probably the first 3 or 4 years. And then after that, it was like a little bit sporadic, the road. And then I got picked up by Joe Coy. I want to say that was 6 years in. I think it was 2009 when I started working with Joe Coy. And then I was with him, like I said, for a year and a half. And so, by 2011 or 2012, that's when I started being on my own. So yeah, it's been 10 years now of doing this particular side of the road. And so, I know that the only way to progress at this point is to either build my own thing, which would be the social media thing, or to continue to try to go through the industry. Well, at this point, I said enough stuff, ironically enough, through social media. I guess the way in is the way out is the point of all this. But, I've just said enough stuff and had enough opinions that a lot of network situations aren't going to want to deal with me. And I don't blame them, and I don't want that. Because there was that road, there was definitely a crossroads at a point where I had to make a decision. And it wasn't as much of a conscious decision or me being difficult as it was in just realizing that I wasn't capable of doing what they wanted me to do. Because if you're going to be gay in this industry, and this is changing, it's slow, but it's changing. And it's one of the reasons that I don't like the LGBT activist and the LGBT narrative is because LGBT, as much as they'll say you can be whatever you want, you can be any kind of LGBT you want, you come out and you have freedom. No, you really don't, especially in the entertainment industry, because a lot of the stereotypes that get perpetuated within the entertainment industry are you've got to want to do hair, you've got to want to do fashion, you've got to want to talk to people about what they're wearing. Bitch, I don't give a fuck what you're wearing. I don't care what I'm wearing half the time. So I don't know the difference between Balenciaga and whatever else the options would be, Versace, or, I mean, like, I'm not gonna look at your dress and be like, oh bitch, where'd you get that, which is what they wanted you to do. Like, it was a lot of, and I've since had people tell me, well, this is maybe the way you could have worded that would have made it a little bit easier. But I made the mistake, and I've made this mistake a lot throughout my career, of talking to people as if they were actual regular people. So when people ask me to tell them about myself, I will tell them about myself. And when they ask me what I would see myself doing if I got on a particular show, I would be honest with them about, well, I don't really know a lot about clothes. And so it's not like I'm going to, be able to tell you what you would want to do if you needed a makeover, or, I would say that kind of stuff. And I would just see them get disappointed and really not like that wasn't the direction I wanted to go in. So then I would joke about gay marriage. I would joke about things to do with LGBT. And that was really, in the beginning, now there's more of a point to everything. But in the beginning, it really was a lot of just me thinking that this was the funny angle to it. Because as a comedian, the type of comedian I am, I can find the funny angle in almost anything. And so I would just find the funny angle in things. And that's the way it started. And I'm glad that it started that way, because what it grew into and what it has made me grow into has been something, or is something, that I really do like, and that I'm really happy with the way that it's happening. I'm really happy with the way that it's triggered my thinking, and the way that it's actually opened my eyes to the way that things actually work, and what my actual thinking is, and what my position is within the gay community, or within LGBT and LGBT rights. And so, I'm not at all disappointed with the way that this has turned out, because otherwise I would have been like a lot of the other LGBT entertainers that will get very defensive with you if you press them even the slightest about their beliefs or what they think. And the reason they do that isn't because of having such strong convictions that they can't be questioned. That's not the reason at all. The reason is that they don't really know why they think what they think, other than they've been told that that's the way that they're supposed to think. So for me, people may not like my thinking, but I can tell you where it comes from. I can tell you why I say the things that I say. I can tell you why I say the things that I say the way that I say them. And there are a few exceptions to that. There are a few things where I'm trying to figure out why it is I come at it this particular way, but that's a part of my writing process. So even that, to me, is a positive sign, because it means that I really am thinking things through, and they do come from somewhere, obviously. So where do they come from? Why do I say them? Why do I say them? How I say them? Like, all that stuff is important to me, as what has turned into an artist, which I never really thought of myself that way, but it is what I am. It's just that my medium is words. And so, yeah, I'm not an artist like my friend Andy here, brainstemming.com, that does these paintings that I do love. I'm not that kind of artist. I wouldn't know what to do with a brush and canvas. But when it comes to words and the stage and a microphone, that's where I excel. That's what I'm good at. And I really do feel that my contributions to the LGBT community, in the end, when it's all said and done, will be important. And up until now have been important, because I do show people a different side of LGBT that opens up their minds and makes them think that they could possibly be friends with a gay person. And if they could be friends with this one gay person, then that means they could probably be friends with more than just this one gay person. And I don't think that that's lost on a lot of people. I do think that whether or not people would want to admit it, I do help open up people's minds, and I do help them to expand to a better place with LGBT. And that in general, or that small step alone helps bring us even closer to having full and equal rights. But sometimes some of the things that LGBT will complain about isn't necessarily to me full rights. It really is special treatment. And I'm not talking about hate crime laws, because I understand why hate crime laws exist. You know, when I had that situation with that particular, I don't want to mention a name because that's, that's dead and needs to be dead. But when that situation happened with that particular person that had threatened me with a hate crime, that was what that was. That was me being talked to that way specifically because I was gay, not because that's the way you talk to everybody. But those were very, very calculated statements that were made to express or to invoke a particular type of fear in a gay person. And so I do understand that. And there are people that are much physically weaker than I am, mentally weaker than I am. And so I understand why these things have to be in place. And there are also people that are just physically more vulnerable than I am. And sometimes the threats are bigger in the way that, and I'm not trying to minimize my own situation, so please don't come at me that way, even though I don't know a lot of people that talk that way. But who knows, there might be some random that's just going to be like, hey, Ty, you really shouldn't minimize your own. Shut up. I got this. What I'm trying to say is there are where the threat is more eminent, like with me, I can be inside or outside as much as I want to. I choose to be out a lot. Well, lately, less and less, because I've been, like I said, working on stuff here at home, so I haven't been out as much. But, I was out a lot for a while there, and I chose to be. But there are certain people that say if you ride the bus every day to and from work, then you have no choice but to be in that vulnerable position. And if you have somebody that's maybe menacing on your walk home or threatening you on a regular basis in a circumstance that you don't have control over whether or not you're in that circumstance because you have to do it to either support yourself or to further your education or whatever the case may be, that makes it so that you don't have the choice to just be like, all right, I'm just not going to go out. Because that's a choice in a lot of cases that I have had where I've just been able to, at certain points, if I wanted to, just be like, I don't want to be out tonight. And that's what I've been doing lately so that I can work on the stuff that I've been working on, is I've just been exercising that choice. It just hasn't been because of any particular threat. But I mean, like, I had that choice when that was going on. Not everybody does. So I definitely do understand why hate crime laws are in place and why there are special accommodations, at least in that way. But those don't only extend to LGBT people, they also extend to people of color as well. And so it's not necessarily what I would call a special treatment. But when I was talking, for example, about that, the trans swimmer, and I was saying that I do agree with Boozy Badass, which a lot of people wouldn't agree with Boozy. And I'm not trying to make excuses for some of the stuff that he said in the past. If you look him up, Boozy, Boosie, Badass, Badazz. If you look him up, you will see that he has actually said a lot of things that are very unpopular towards LGBT. So with that being the case, when it comes to Boozy and that kind of situation, it's like, I do understand what he was saying when he said that the trans swimmer was not necessarily being fair because she was 462nd in ranking when she was swimming as a male, which was 2.5 years before, and now she's ranked number 1. And so there are differences between male and female, and I think we can all agree to that. As far as physically, genetically, biologically, there are differences. So if you were 462nd as a male and then you switch over to being on the female team or on the female side and now you're first, then there probably is something to that. It's probably not just that you all of a sudden became this world-class swimmer. So that's when I think it is special treatment, because it's like, okay, well, I don't necessarily think that just because you transition now, these women, genetic, biological women, should get slighted out of whatever it is they were trying to do or their dreams because now you've made a transition. So when it comes to that, I feel like that is a little bit of wanting special treatment, and especially when if you say anything that's like what I'm saying now, you're considered transphobic, and then that turns into a thing where now you shouldn't be able to work, now you shouldn't be able to express opinions, now you should be persona non grata because you've expressed an unpopular opinion that may be just you being concerned for what it is you're getting out of the shake, like what end of the stick are you getting if you are one of the people that she's competing against. And I don't have a problem with pronouns. I'm not going to misgender her and be like he and him. But, even though on the video I said he bitch, but that's just because I'm being stupid. But, that's the other thing people don't get about my choice in words is, yeah, I do sometimes say things that are inflammatory, but that's just because they're funny, and it's my job to be funny. I'm a comedian, so it is my job to pick particular words to be funny. And sometimes people will ask me, well, do you ever worry about your words possibly hurting anybody? Not really, because I think everybody should be able to be strong enough to understand, I'm not trying to issue any call to action. I don't think there should be any violence committed against this person. I don't think that people should online bully them or harass them or anything like that. But me as a public person, because I think people also forget how long I've been a public person. And even though that may sound like a strong term, that's what I've been out in the public, and I've been on various forms of social media, not only my own, but much bigger platforms. And so a lot of people have had opinions about me, and that's something I've had to put up with. People have said all sorts of terrible things about me. Like I talked about it a couple episodes where I talked about the only time I really let the internet hurt my feelings was that time that it was before I got the silicone taken out, and everybody was just saying the worst things about me on this particular video in the comments. And I forced myself to read every one of those comments. And yeah, it wasn't a pleasant feeling at the time, but it did give me callous to that and make me a stronger person in the long run. And so sometimes also when you think about bullying and social media, some of the things that are the funniest or the funniest memes are bullying. It's just that we don't look at them that way. Like a lot of the stuff people said about Donald Trump, you can argue that Donald Trump is a terrible person. I've been over this a million times. I personally don't feel that way. I think Donald Trump is fun. I was glad he was our president. If he runs again, I'm voting for Donald Trump. But you really could argue that, if you see things a particular way, that he's a horrible person, blah, 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 right? But that doesn't mean that when people were talking about his weight, that wasn't bullying. When people were talking about his comb over, that wasn't bullying. When people were talking about how stupid he was over and over and over, that was all bullying. It just was. It's just there's a certain segment of the population that tends to think that as long as they're bullying for good, that it's not considered bullying. And it's like, you can do that if you want to. You can bully if you want to. And I'm not going to try to come down on you, and I'm not going to try to make your life hard, and I'm not going to try to figure out where you work to get you fired. But you've got to be honest with yourself about the fact that you are, at that point, bullying. That's what it is. So don't sugarcoat it and don't make yourself feel like, well, yeah, but it's because he's a horrible person. You're still bullying. So whether or not it's bullying in the name of good or bullying in the name of bad, you're still bullying. I know, because I've been bullied a lot on social media. And I shouldn't even put bullying in quotes, because it has been outright bullying what has happened to me in a lot of cases. Even recently, a lot of the stuff that's happened to me has been bullying. Some of it has been in-person bullying. And nobody ever came to my defense. Nobody, to this day, people really haven't come to my defense on any of that. And that's why in a lot of these cases, I'm not the most sympathetic to other people. Because the truth is, I've been through that stuff. And I've seen the way that it works out. And I've seen the way that people will conveniently turn the other way if they think you're unpopular at the moment. Sometimes even people that you thought were friends. And that's one of the things that I've really had to come to terms with over the last couple of months, because there has been a lot of reflection. There has been a lot of self-reflection. There has been a lot of actually dissecting things and seeing why they happen the way they happen and what my part was in them. Because I always feel like you're never going to grow if you don't actually look at what your responsibility was in every situation that you were in. And so for me, with some of those situations, it really has been just me coming to terms with the fact that there were people that I really thought I was friends with. There were people that I even considered family. And they weren't my family. You know, my family's been great. But like there were people that I honestly did consider to be like family that ended up turning on me and not only turned out not to have my back, but the complete opposite, stabbed me in the back. And so, you know, when it comes to that, to me, that part was worse than bullying. You're just regular bullying, because I really did think that these people were my friends. And in a lot of cases, the things that they talk about that, you know, I supposedly said to them that were so terrible weren't even about them. They were about the situation, and they weren't even terrible. They were just me coming to them as a friend and saying, hey, I don't want this to get any bigger. I would like to be discreet about this, but these are the problems that we have, or these are the problems that I have with this other person that's your friend. So the way I thought about it in my head was with them being a mutual friend to me and the offending party, then they could mediate that. And instead, the complete opposite happened, where they turned on me, and that's because it felt like the popular thing to do at the moment. And it's funny to see some of those people now try to backtrack because I'm doing well, because it didn't break me the way they thought it would. You know, that's what's funny about it. It's like, you know, if somebody tries to set you on fire and you just happen to be fire retardant. It's funny referring to yourself as retardant. I said retardant, not the other, retardant. And then they're just like, oh, you didn't catch on fire. Well, I guess maybe I should try to be friends with you. No, I'm fine. I'm fine. I don't need to be friends with people that would try to set me on fire in the first place. I know that you're surprised that it didn't turn out that way, but, you know, it is what it is, and you tried to set me on fire. I just saw one tonight that gave me an under the breath hello, trying to feel me out and see, no, I'm fine to not be friends. I'm completely cool to not be friends. Well, you guys, for a guy that claims to be completely unbothered, I guess there was a lot bothering me. But I will tell you, in all honesty, that throughout our conversation, I have once again found my way to being unbothered. This has been Thai Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world.